So this video is all about grain filler. I'm going to show you how to apply it. We're going to look at 2 different colours of filler and how you can add your own colour. I'm going to show you one use of using filler to augment the grain of your wood. And we're going to talk about adding primer over the top if you want a super smooth finish for a paint job. In this video, I'm using exclusively NitorLACK products, so thank you for them to supplying them for me. If you want to get any yourself, there's a link in my video description of where you can get them from. So the first stage of putting the filler on is to mix it up. The filler comes out quite thick. And you want to mix it with some water so it's at a consistency where you can pour it like this and rub it in. I'm rubbing it in just with a cotton rag. And I'm not putting too much on at a time, but essentially you do want to put it enough on so it really seeps into the pores. You're pushing and rubbing, so you're getting it into all the pores that you can. And don't worry if you do get too much on. The more you have on, the more there is to clean up later, but you know that it's probably going into all those gaps. What you can see on this guitar is it's actually made out of sections put together. And because of what I want the guitar to look like at the end, it's deliberately a bit rough. It's got some scratches in it. I wasn't too precise with my sanding, but really you want to have your guitar sanded down with a good 400 grit before you start putting in the filler. And one of the great things about this NitorLACK filler is it's very easy to just stain it and colour it. So here I'm using a Nitor Aqua black stain, so it's a water-based stain. NitorLACK actually do sell a black filler anyway, but what I like about this natural light filler is it's quite easy to change the colour. So there's potential effects you might get if you're using, for example, a translucent nitro spray over the top, or just a clear coat because you want the wood to show through, but you want to do something special with the grain. Now once you put all the filler on, you want to leave it to dry for about 10 or 15 minutes. You can see it's got this sort of white chalky powder over the top. And then I'm just going in with a paint scraper at a 45-degree angle to smoothly scrape that filler away. It's actually easier to see it on that black grey stain that I mixed up. You can see the areas where I've scraped it away quite obviously here. Now, you want to scrape as much off as you can because that's going to save you on the next job of all the sanding, but obviously don't go in so hard that you're going to damage your guitar with the end of the scraper. Here you can actually see the section I've scraped and the section I haven't scraped yet, just to see how much is coming off. And those white cloudy areas are where there's some dried filler still to peel off. And we do that by sanding. And when I'm sanding, I like to use a wet sand, but you could do it with a dry sand as well. And I'm going in again with 400 grit. Now some people, once they've done this, will do a second coat of the filler just to make sure it's really filled those pores. What you can see actually is how the filler really fills in those scratches. So if you were then going to be painting it with a solid colour, the filler might help conceal some of your sanding scratches in your initial stages. I've got a video that I'll link to below, which I'm using this NitorLACK filler with the black mix, the one you saw earlier. I'm going to take that guitar further forward so you can see how I use the filler to emphasize the grain when I'm using a translucent nitro. In this case, the translucent red, which I absolutely love. And I've also got some videos using other NitorLACK products. If you want to buy any of them, I've got a link in the video description below as to where you can get them from. Now let me show you a totally different guitar. This is an Aria 2 Pro bass that's come in for repair. It was very badly damaged. The poly on the surface was all chipped and broken, so I've had to strip all of that off and now I'm going to recoat it. And what I noticed on these side sections, the grain was much darker because it had been filled with black. So here I'm using the actual NitorLACK black filler as opposed to the one that I mixed up on that Strat that you just saw. Basically exactly the same process, rubbing it in, letting it dry for 10 minutes, using a scraper at a 45-degree angle to get as much off the surface as I can, and then sanding it back, ready to be sprayed. So just while I explain another use for filler, let me show you some images of where it's at the moment. So another reason to use grain filler is to get a completely smooth surface on your guitar for a nice solid colour that you might be putting on with one of the many NitorLACK sprays that you can get. In that case, I would definitely recommend using filler and a primer. So let me just show you some samples I've made where I'm using the primer. And we can see what's better, using primer or filler or both. But just to quickly say, some people like a solid plain colour where some of the wood grain is still coming through. In which case, you might just want to use the primer or the filler or neither. So let's see what I can describe from my samples. So this sample has had no filler put on, but the top half has had primer put on. And then it's been covered in the white. You can just about see there the grain. You can see some of the reflection from where it's just had this light 400 grit sand, but you can definitely see here and here. Quite hard to see on camera, but there's definitely a difference here. This feels much thicker and smoother to me. So it feels like this would just need a bit more sanding, and possibly you'd get rid of some of the grain, but I think more likely is a bit of sanding and another coat of white. So the top has had filler and primer and then the white, and we can see apart from the bit of dust there, you can see it's pretty smooth compared to the bit here which has had filler and no primer, which isn't bad at all, but you can see some of the wood coming through. So it's pretty clear that when you have filler and primer, you get this lovely smooth finish. When you have just the filler, it is, I think, a bit better than just the primer, but only slightly. And when you've had none, it's not good. Like, that is not a professional finish. That would definitely need a lot more coats of white to get rid of that look of the grain. So you could get away with just primer or just filler, but both is definitely much better. Here's one, whole one, that's had everything on it. Also, here is that body that I used in the very first example when I was using the natural grain filler. I'm really happy with how it's turned out for my client. I'm going to have some videos on that soon. It's gone to a special place, unlike where any of my guitars have gone before. So like and subscribe if you want to see that. Till next time, happy strumming.